The chair recognizes the gentleman from Guam, Mr. San Nicolas, for 5 minutes.
Oftentimes, Mr. Speaker, it gets very, very difficult for us, especially as territories, to be able to find closure on long-standing issues because of the fact that territories are underrepresented in this body by the very nature of their existence in this country. I, Michael 116th, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter, so help me God.
May the good Lord be with you down every road you roam. And may sunshine and happiness surround you when you're far from home. And may you grow to be proud, dignified and true.
And welcome to San Nicolas for coming to the island. He's been a great ally and friend, not just in the committee in the House, but in many of the other issues. The territories are together fighting Medicaid, fighting many issues regarding energy as well.
Be courageous and be brave, and in my heart you'll always stay forever young, forever young. May good fortune be with you, may your guiding light be strong. Build a stairway to heaven with a prince or a vagabond.
Guam is a very goodwill community. We're going around delivering goodies and going around to say hello, and I think that that's a very appropriate thing to do, especially when certain members of Congress may not be very familiar with Guam, and we're going to continue with that outreach. That's a very positive thing to do, and I'm very, very grateful that the country is, getting to know Guam as we speak.
You guys found a low float, low volume, massively shorted stock, and you guys squeezed it. And I think that investors like Mr. Plotkin, large money managers, probably doubled down on their short positions thinking that they're going to win. And in the end, the massive communication networks that we have these days rallied the small to beat the large. You took from your customers in order to minimize the $3 billion from being larger than it probably would have been, because you wanted to protect your position. And that is very troubling. I really hope that at the end of the day, those bag voters get a lot more than an apology.
I want to also say how important it is to work with your representative, Congressman San Nicolas. I have, from the day one he hit the ground running in Washington, D.C., he has actually done something a little different than some representatives. He's actually gotten an appointment to an exclusive committee of the United States Congress, the Financial Services Committee. That's an amazing accomplishment. Yeah, that's a really big deal.
When it comes to export-oriented industry, we don't have similar markets. The territories of Guam, the Commonwealth, the Northern Mariana Islands, and American Samoa, we're Pacific territories. We can reach out into Australia, New Guinea, New Zealand, the Philippines, all of Southeast Asia, all the way up into Japan and Korea.
Will my colleague yield?
I will.
I support your addition. I think it's a reasonable inclusion. The fact that you're on this committee is a service to the territories and your representation of their needs is heard, and I have no objection with your amendment.
No matter how much we go out diplomatically to try and talk about whether or not the United States is a good partner or a good ally, it is entirely reflected in whether or not our territories, our tribal nations, and our freely associated allies are succeeding or failing. And the success or failure of these administered areas rests largely with the Department of Interior.
As the representative from Guam, I bring to the committee the unique perspective of having the only district that is actually an island. And we're in the South Pacific. And General Cheney, I really appreciate your perspective because we have significant military assets on the island, as well as significant military assets to our allies in the South, particularly the Republic of the Marshall Islands, on Kwajalein Atoll that is just a few feet above sea level. And so these climate change concerns are absolutely national security concerns. We heard earlier that the budget for the interior is roughly $12 billion, and that year over year we're looking at a $245 million increase from last year, a 2% increase. Of this $12 billion, the assistance to territories makes up less than 1% in FY 2020. For FY 2021, this budget is proposing a 20% cut of that $100 million, making the territorial allocation less than 0.75% of the entire interior budget. Mr. Chairman, it's important to note for the record that territories are under the plenary power of Congress, and we have, over the course of exercising that power, assigned the Department of Interior as the primary agency responsible for carrying out the civilian components of our administration of territories. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to ask my colleagues of the committee to support H.R. 1365 so that we maybe make whole the greatest generation, many of whom are sadly leaving us before seeing closure.
Mr. Bishop.
Can I say very briefly that I approve of what you have done and what your predecessor had done. This is important work, and I thank you for bringing it up. I fully support this bill.
In the opinion of the chair, and this is not even a guess, the ayes have it, and the bill is ordered favorably reported. The motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
While H.R. 1365 is a bipartisan bill that would simply make technical corrections to the current Guam World War II Loyalty Recognition Act, it is the final component of a 75-year saga rooted in loyalty, faith, hope, and love in the midst of unimaginable suffering. Over these past 75 years, our World War II survivors and their families have made their home throughout this country. Notwithstanding our current political status, our sons and daughters, mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters have died defending the freedom that liberators brought to our shores 75 years ago. While we struggle on Guam under inequities in supplemental security income, Medicaid, treaty obligations, and even basic voting rights, we remain the Sparta of America, with the highest per capita armed services recruitment rates in the country. This bill is going to do so much good for veterans who deserve it, and it's going to do so much good for particular veterans who served on Guam and were exposed to Agent Orange. It's the only bill right now, Mr. Speaker, that's going to get that done. The late Lonnie Kilpatrick died from his exposures to Agent Orange, and my bipartisan colleague Gus Bilirakis and I introduced a bill to address that exposure. And this legislation that we're talking about today, the Honoring Our Pact Act, will get that done. Let's not weaponize the frustrations of the VA to prevent those kind of solutions. Let's get this done for our veterans. It's about time. I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
Whatever road you choose, I'm right behind you. Win or lose, forever young, forever young,
very anxiously looking forward to what we're going to be able to do to keep people, having money in their pocket so that they're not going to be getting more desperate. There's been a lot of talk. The president has been talking about $1,000 per individual. I know that the Senate has mentioned $1,200 per individual. Either way, all of these things are going to be funded by the U.S. Department of Treasury and the Federal Reserve. Both of those agencies fall under the Financial Services Committee, where Guam is the vice chair. And so that's really, really good news. I hate sounding positive in all this, but it's good news for Guam in that the package that's going to be put together is going to go through the Financial Services Committee So we're going to make sure that territories are included, and we're going to make sure that the unique circumstances of Guam are taken into consideration when these things are rolled out.
It's about 10 o'clock at night with the latest updates on where we are with the federal relief package that's working its way through the Congress. Basically what's happened is the Senate first introduced their version, the CARES Act, which got some resistance and it didn't pass on 2 occasions. The House introduced its version so that we can see where everyone stands on the issues and everyone can come together and negotiate a final outcome. And we've, I think, come to a final outcome. And I wanted to be able to share with you what that final outcome looks like so that we can all have an idea of what to expect and what work needs to be done in order for the people of Guam to be able to finally get the relief that all of you are so waiting for. And this is HR 6800. It's called the HEROES Act. And I wanted to discuss in this press conference the specific sections in the HEROES Act, particularly how they're going to be of benefit to the island and the people of Guam. And so to begin, we have from financial services and general government, there's $20 billion that's being committed to the governments of the territories with fiscal impacts from the public health emergency. $10 billion will be divided equally among the 5 territories within 30 days of enactment. $10 billion will be awarded based on the territory's share of population within 30 days of enactment. And so for Guam, what this means is that in 2020, Guam should receive $2.471 billion in order to offset the costs of the COVID circumstances. Additionally, Guam will receive $212 million based on the population distribution. And so we have $10 billion that's specifically being divided amongst the 5 territories. And then we have another $10 billion that's population based. The population based amount is $212 million. The $10 billion comes out to $2.471 million for Guam. That's a dramatic amount of money. We're talking about $2.68 billion just for 2020. It's been a very active 2 months. The previous 2 months before that have been very active, and the 2 months before that have been very active. We're staying out here to get the work done. And I really miss Guam. I really can't wait to come home. It's just there's no place like home. But we're gonna stay out here until the work gets done because that's what you put us out here to do, and I want to see it through. The HEROES reconciliation with the HEALS Act, getting that second stimulus to our people, keeping Guam included in the relief packages going forward, getting the Senate and the White House on board with the H-2B exemptions, getting the mortgage assistance included in the final relief packages. All those things are very, very critical areas that we really need to see through. And I'm going to continue to do what I have to do in order to make sure the people of Guam get what they deserve and get the fair treatment that we're asking for. Basically, it'll be the federal government putting more dollars back into the hands of our people with their income tax credit program, and the local government receiving a significant reimbursement of that, which has also historically been a real significant revenue concern, not only for the government of Guam, but for our rating agencies, who have commented that if we ameliorate EITC, it will, in and of itself, all these other funding opportunities aside, ameliorate the financial stress that GovGuam experiences on an annualized basis.
Governor, I would like you to know that the successes that you have been able to realize were all because of your representative. I want you to know that your congressional representative here, Michael San Nicolas, has done a fabulous job in recognizing your territory. Thank you very much.
First, if I may begin by just thanking the legislatura for making the efforts to try and bring more relief to our people. These circumstances that they are all enduring, stemming from the pandemic and continuing on to this very day, are very difficult for them. And this conversation to try and bring utility relief to them is, I think, something that everyone in the community is looking forward to. And any way that we can meaningfully contribute to helping all of you make a decision is a small honor for us. So thank you all very much for having us. And in the interim final rule from Treasury, it is very clear in black and white. And I brought it down with me, and I have it open here on page 6 and page 7, highlighted, and I can read it into the record if you'd like. The Coronavirus State Local Fiscal Recovery Funds is available to support the COVID-19 public health and economic response by addressing COVID-19 and its impact on public health, as well as addressing economic harms to households, small businesses, nonprofits, impacted industries, and the public sector. And then it goes on specifically on page 7 to read, eligible uses for assistance to impacted households include aid for reemployment, job training, food, rent, mortgages, utilities, affordable housing development, child care, early education, addressing learning loss, and many more uses. So the interim final is very clear. The funds can be used for utility relief. I know that in some of the notes that we took when reviewing some of the statements from the administration, it was very pointedly stated that we cannot fund utility program with American Rescue Plan funds because rate hikes are a consequence of the Ukraine war. I know that the Ukraine war was being cited by the administration. And truth be told, if we do go to Treasury and say we're trying to fund anything as a result of Ukraine or inflation or any other purpose other than COVID-19 relief, then of course Treasury will come back and say, no, you can't do that because these funds were specific to COVID-19 relief. However, if we go to Treasury and we say we want to use these funds for utility relief in line with the authorized purposes to respond for COVID-19, Treasury of course will say, yeah, it's in black and white. Please feel free to do that.
And Congressman, again, I thank you so much for clarifying it, not just for this body, but for the listening audience as well, that these ARP fundings can be used for this program. Thank you.
I just want to thank the Congressman for coming up today and sharing this information. I'll just yield for now.
Thank you, Congressman Nicolas. Thank you. Thank you for visiting us again.
I thank you for your perspective. It's always good to have that well-rounded perspective.
Madam Chair, and to your Congressman, welcome back to the People's House, where you served honorably. So glad to have you here today, and I appreciated a number of different things that you pointed out in your State of the Congress address and congressional address, and I particularly appreciate your discussion on this issue.
Thank you, Congressman, for your time and your presence here with us. Within the last just few minutes, you were able to clarify information that we were asking the previous panel that couldn't read to us, where it says we couldn't. It was direct questions that was posed by my colleagues to say, read to us where you can't use that. They said it's a matter of interpreting the final rules and how they're written, and they feel they cannot do it. Nor could they answer to us, well, how are other states then able to do this? How is our sister island, CNMI, able to do this?
I'd just like to thank the Congressman as well for being here, offering his time to give us a clarification and, on the rules for the use of the ARP funding.
Members of Legislatura, Governor Leon Guerrero, local leaders, this is a one-time opportunity. We cannot get it wrong. We have to get it right. There will not be another $600 million in the future. There is no more EITC or Medicaid gap to fill. We will not see a similar confluence of circumstances that will bring our credit ratings up and increase our debt ceiling capacity like we have today, which means that the people in this room, to include myself, if we screw this up, we screw it up permanently. My colleagues and I have worked very hard on issues like earned income tax credit, supplemental security income for our people, Medicaid for our parity in the reimbursements that we receive, territorial highway funding for our roads that are oftentimes neglected because we get it from a different funding source. There are just so many territorial nuances throughout the history of this country and throughout the laws that are enacted that take a lot of work for us to remedy. And so for us to be here today and remedy this situation with the initiative of the Smithsonian, raising these flags that probably should have been here a long time ago. It just sends the right message that the focus of this federal government is indeed going to be on all Americans. And that is something for us all to celebrate here today. So thank you all very much for having us.